Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books. Today I'm here with my December wrap up. I just posted my November wrap up. I'm a little late with these because life happens and I needed to take a break from filming and uploading videos. In addition, I'm planning to change the way I do some of these wrap ups this year, and you'll see those changes right away as soon as I begin filming those videos. But for now, let's just focus on the books that I read in December. And the first book that I finished in December was I Married a Lizardman. This is by Regine Abel. I needed something just light, and monster romance seemed like it was just a thing. This one, however, really surprised me because of the amount of depth it had. Yes, I Married a Lizardman has a lot of depth. I'm finding that monster romances actually do have quite a bit of depth. In this one, you have a human who lives in a society in which farming is very prized, but primarily most of the land goes to the oldest daughter. Our heroine is not the oldest daughter. She tries to get married in order to kind of escape what happens to a daughter that does not inherit land, and ends up not being able to find anybody to marry. So she goes to an agency that matches her with a lizard man. In this world, they are reproductively compatible, like they can reproduce. So they warn her that all her children would be lizard people. Anyway, she ends up in the lizard man's planet, and yeah, there's lots of like discussions of colonialism, of like intercultural, multicultural elements. This was short and I kind of liked it, so there you go. Then the next book I finished was Angela Davis's autobiography. After reading Asata Shakur's autobiography in November, I really was just in the mood to continue reading Black Power autobiographies, and Angela Davis just has a really interesting story. She's an academic, a Black Power activist, and wrote books on the abolition of prisons and Black feminism before like people were looking for that kind of literature. And so she has an amazing history, and so I wanted to read it from her own words. And I have to say, even though I knew a lot of her story, I found that reading it in her own words really had an impact. She's a really wonderful writer and storyteller. The way she tells her story was just so moving. The whole time focused on community. Like there are times in which she could have really tucked herself up a lot, and she really focused more on describing how community helped her achieve what she was achieving. So I highly, highly recommend her autobiography if you are all at all interested. Next, I read Southern Horrors: Lynch Law in All Its Faces by Ida B. Wells. I've been wanting to read Ida B. Wells for a long time. This one was available, so I picked it up. It's a short kind of series of articles that Ida B. Wells wrote as a journalist on lynching in the South. She had firsthand accounts, and really these articles were meant for the wider audience who might not understand lynching. And I thought she did such a wonderful job describing the horrors of it. It was at times hard to read, but I think just absolutely necessary. What I'm finding when I'm teaching some of this history is that a lot of students don't know how horrific things got with lynching and how recent this history is. How the last lynchings we know of like were not that long ago. So I'm planning on using excerpts from these essays in a class next time I teach my US history classes. The next book that I read was Brotherhood in Death by J.D. Robb or Nora Roberts. This is book number 42 in the In Death series. And this was a good one. Like the typical kind of in-depth book, really is reflected in this story. You have an interesting murder mystery, but really what gets you more to read these books is Dallas, the main character, and kind of the people that she surrounds herself with, how she's developing relationships, her relationships with her friends, with her husband, with her co-workers. So this was a good installment. The next book that I finished was Natural Enemies by Roan Parrish. This is a male-male romance, and it's pretty short. I got this in like a goodie bag from the Rip Bodice a couple of years ago, I believe, maybe more than a couple of years ago. And I've been looking at my shelves trying to, one, read what I have on my shelves and also weed out any books that I don't want to own. So I picked this one up thinking, well, this is a book I didn't particularly choose. It came in the goodie bag, but I will give it a chance, read a few chapters, see if I even want to finish it, and if not, I will donate it. Well, I started reading it and I was hooked. It's the story of these two men who are really into gardening, the science of gardening, and also the communal aspects of it. So one of our heroes is a botanist, and he's all Mr. Serious. He's pursuing an academic career. And our second hero is really focused on community gardening and on education and outreach in the community. And so while they share a love of plants and the science behind it, they clash on on their careers and what they see is the point of studying all of this. It's high heat. It's a high heat romance, so be aware of that. But I ended up really enjoying it unexpectedly because I wasn't expecting much from a book I hadn't chosen, had not purchased myself. The next book that I finished was A Girl Like Her by Talia Hibbert. And I really, really loved this one. And it reminded me that I need to read more Talia Hibbert. The Brown Sister trilogy was really great for me, and I've been wanting to go into the backlist of Talia Hibbert and read a lot more of this. This one was just so stinking cute. You're following a heroine who's really into graphic novels. She designs some herself, and she's really been kind of closed off to the world after the breakup with her ex and everything that happened in the community after the breakup, because she was with this man who didn't want to acknowledge that he was romantically and sexually interested in her, so he kept her hidden, and then announced his engagement to another woman. That resulted from that led to her just wanting to stay home and never leave. Enter a new next door neighbor who is not interested in gossip. He's not interested in kind of all the norms of society. He's really interested in our heroine, and I thought that Hibbert really did a good job of writing these two really interesting, flawed, but beautiful characters. I really, really liked this book. Next, I read, and my buddy read this with Shannon over at That's So Poe. This is Angela Davis's Our Prison Obsolete. I've been meaning to read this book for a long, long time, and finally Shannon reached out and was like, "We should read it." And I was like, "Yes, please." And I didn't realize how short of a book it actually is. And really, this book is an introduction to anybody interested in prison abolition. Like, the main argument the book is making is that we should think about getting rid of prisons. And she lays out all the arguments, all the reasons why you want to broaden the way you think and imagine a world without prisons the way we know them today. And it doesn't mean, no crime is going to be prosecuted, no person's ever going to be like removed from society, but there are such huge flaws with our current criminal justice system and prison system that it needs to be completely rethought, and she makes the case why reform is not enough. So anybody interested in reading about prison abolition, this is a great place to start. The next book that I finished in December was How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water by Angie, Cruz. So this is a really interesting book. It's the first book by Cruz that I've read. I have Dominicana, but I haven't read it yet. This one, though, the format is you are reading the interviews of a immigrant woman in the United States as she is going into like a job recruitment office where it's like a social service office where they're gonna help her to train and to prepare for the job search. So in the story, we're just seeing basically like the the transcript of meetings she has with one of the people working at this, job interviews, housing interviews, like it's all through documents. But through these documents, you get a full picture of who this immigrant woman is, the life she has, and the community that she has built around her. I found it to be really fantastic book, at times heavy, content warnings for violence, physical abuse of children, um, homophobia, um, and lots of difficult topics in it, but well worth the read if you're interested at all. It was just a really fantastic book. The next book I finished was The Hacienda by Isabelle Cañas. This book is described as like a mashup of Mexican Gothic and Rebecca. And yeah, if you like Rebecca and or Mexican Gothic, I think you're going to like this book. In the story, you begin at the end of the Mexican Revolution with our heroine's dad being betrayed by a different faction in the Mexican Revolution. He dies, and so our heroine and her mother need to go live with relatives. Her mother had been ostracized by her family because she married a darker skinned man. And now that she has nothing, they kind of take pity on her, allow her to live with them, but she's treated like a servant. So our heroine is now of marriage age. She is proposed to, and she agrees to marry this man, not for love, but for security. He owns a big chunk of land, he owns this estate, and he is in favor with the current political faction that's in power. So they get married, and off she goes to his estate, to this hacienda, and she is planning on making this place her home, right? And to bring her mother and to make everything good. Well, she gets to this hacienda, and nothing, absolutely nothing is what it seems. It's a story about ghosts and about the horrors that people create. Um, it's also, there's a lot of commentary in here about the Catholic Church, its persecution of magic and cultural beliefs of indigenous people. And I love that aspect of it. And it's also just a really fantastic, like, haunted house story. Like, it just is. It's fun if you like that kind of story. So I highly, highly recommend it. I gave it a 5 stars because I just really enjoyed it a lot. The next book I finished was The Love Connection by Denise Williams. So this is a novella written by Denise Williams, who I love. By the way, her romances, every single of her romances I've read have been like just really fantastic for me. This one's short, and it takes place almost entirely in an airport. Our heroine runs a dog grooming or an animal grooming business at the airport. I've never seen a dog grooming business at an airport, but you know, gotta suspend belief on there. Our hero comes in through the gate right across from the grooming business every week, the same day, same time. And so she kind of observes that there's kind of a connection. And then they finally meet, and a kind of airport romance ensues. Really creative setting, I found. I really liked the hero and the heroine. I loved them together. And I tend to not like novellas because they tend to always be too short when I like them, or just not satisfying enough. This one, though, I found to be quite good. Maybe a little rushed at the end, but it worked for me. So I really, really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to continue reading the rest of these airport novellas. She wrote several of these, so I'm going to keep on reading. And then at the end of the year, I needed another monster romance. So I began the month of December with a monster romance, and I ended the month with a monster romance. This was The Orc from The Office. This is book number 2 in the Cloths and Cubicles series by Kate Pryor. And the story begins with this woman who is like works in HR. She's working on this filing system, but one of the file cabinets is stuck. In comes in this random orc who's walking through the hall and wants to help her open this cabinet. Well, in the process of opening this cabinet, she accidentally hits him in the nose and makes him bleed. She doesn't realize, though, but that this whole act of making him bleed has officially mated her to him in orc society. So now he comes back the next day and he tells her, we have to go to HR. HR will explain everything to you. In the meantime, part of the mating ritual is that they're both basically like in heat. They're extremely aroused. And so it's a high heat monster romance. I found this one to be interesting, kind of funny, adorable at times, and just like what I expect from a monster romance, quite honestly. So it was nice. For me, it was a 3-star read. I really liked aspects of it, other aspects of it, because it's a shorter story. Needed more, a little more for me to really love it, but overall it was a good monster romance, I guess. So that is it. Those are all the books that I read in December. If you've read any of these, if you have any recommendations for monster romances, I now have a list of monster romances on my Kindle that I want to get to, especially the ones that are kind of have a little more depth in it. I've really been enjoying, but the lighthearted, kind of more just for fun ones are also good. And yeah, so from now on, just as a quick note on the channel, what I'm planning to do with these wrap-ups is, instead of wrapping things up at the end of the month, I'm going to wrap things up every 5 books. Like every 5 books I read, I'm going to do a wrap-up. Post it on the channel. So some weeks, this will guarantee, I think, almost every week I will have a video up on my channel talking about the books that I've read. Sometimes there might be 2, sometimes there might be none, depending on like the school year, my workload, family stuff, all of those things. But overall, I think this will average out to at least 1 video a week on my channel in which I'm discussing what I've read. So expect that coming up. But if you've read any of the books in that I discussed on this wrap up, or if you plan to, please let me know down below in the comments sections and section. And thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.